Hey everyone, it's Ria. Thanks for coming back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be making the one with Warmino, which you can see right here. I have a handful of them right now. It's a bag that I obviously like, but it's also a really great bag for travel. And I'm sort of looking at this as, at least for now, the end of my travel series. So we've already made the Guardian Backpack by Lynn's Handmade. We made a Gallivanter Passport Wallet by Sonar. We made the Gabriella by the Emporium, and now we're making the one with Warmino by Sincerely Jen Patterns. So you can see, as I said, I've got quite a few. I've got my Disney version here, all decked out, so when I go on my trips to Disney. Here's just a fun one that I made at one point because I like the print. This is obviously Warmino print, and I have some purple vinyl here that I had from Bodeo. I thought it would look nice. Here is my travel version that's not themed to anything. I just thought, again, love the print. I added some few things here. So I added, well, this one had a magnetic snap there, I guess already, but I added magnetic snap on the back. On all of the ones I've made, I've added a zipper panel on the top. It's not there per the pattern, but I really like how that works. And so that's my normal, sort of, at least up to now, my normal travel one. This one, okay, I didn't make this one, but I still have to show it because it's in my collection now, and it's so pretty. And it's Ghost Muse from the Emporium. She doesn't have, by the way, she doesn't have the clear right now, but she does have, at least earlier today, normal vinyl. So I'll link that because it's the cutest pattern. But I mean, look, it's pretty. It's got Ghost Muse and it shakes. So just had to include that one as well. This one, per the pattern, has, well, it has stuff on the inside, so we won't show the stuff, but it has a magnetic snap to keep it closed. So that's my current collection, but we now have this one as well. And this is the version that we're making today, which is just so ridiculously pretty. We're using, for this one, as you can see, the new Garden Splash pattern in the small scale from Warmino. I do have my tag here from the Heart, Red, and Hide, but the colors on this with this blue vinyl, Luxe vinyl from Warmino, the purple, it's just so pretty. And then I've got a contrasting webbing here for the double-sided strap from Georgia Girl Stitches. It's so pretty. So as you can see, it's got, per the pattern, it's got this great front pocket. Don't drop it. It has a magnetic snap, or no, sorry, it has a back pocket like the one I showed before. Because this is travel, I add the magnetic snap. I've also added, let me zip it up, the top closure like I did in the other ones, because if I'm traveling, I want that to be a little more secure. And then inside, we've got the zipper pocket. I did it with an overlay. The pattern doesn't have an overlay, but I like how that looked. And then I did also add a divided slip pocket. It's not a cargo slip pocket, it's just a normal slip pocket, but I've added that. I also, like I did with the Gabriella, I've got, let me straighten this out, one side of my strap attached, fully attached. Oops, we're getting a little twisted there. There we go. It's fully attached. One side you can remove, so again, you can confidently take it off when you're sitting somewhere outside and wrap it around and a leg or whatever and clip this on and know that it's secure. And so those are some of the changes we make for travel bags. But even if you don't and you decide to make this per the pattern and follow along, this is a great pattern. I mean, you can see I've got 4 of them already. It's great also if you're new to bag making, because there are a lot of good skill building features to it. You've got zippers, you've got magnetic snaps. You can either do it with the magnetic snap or you have it here. You're putting in strap connectors, boxing your bottoms. There are really a lot of good skill building features to this bag. So hopefully you follow along, or at least get some ideas about ways that you can modify your own bag for travel. Let's get started. So let's take a look at the materials for our one with Warmino that we're making. We've got 3 piles, if you can see, there we go. So let's actually move this over. We're going to start with the very front, because this is sort of the, oops, let me turn it this way, there we go, sort of the feature of it. And we're going to have, pull some of this out. First you're going to have, oh, there we go. You're going to have your main panel like this. And so you just cut one of those out. And then, of course, what we have normally on the front here is the pocket, which is both a zipper pocket and a magnetic slip pocket. And so for that, we have a number of pieces. We have first these pocket pieces. We have our front feature one. So the pocket will sort of look like this. Let me get the linings out for a moment. It's going to look like this. Then going to have a band right there. So you can see I'm going to use some blue, tie in some of the blue from the print. We will then have our zipper. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to bump the phone, the camera. And then there'll be another band up here. Now, they'll actually end up being the same, about the same size, top and bottom, but this is going to wrap all the way around. We're going to attach a lining piece to it. It's going to wrap around and form the bottom of the pocket. So those are our three that we're going to really see here. For these, as you can see, I already put the snap on. I meant to use a full-size snap, and I pulled out the small one because I'm going to use it on our back. And then I grabbed one of the small ones. So we're having small snaps all around. I did also, because I prepped some of this ahead of time, I wanted to make sure I remembered which side will be sewn against the zipper tape. So this is the side that eventually needs to be up, like this. This is the side that has to go against the zipper tape. I did not want to forget, so I wrote that on there. So we've got those pieces there. The zipper tape is also one, as you can see, I've already put my tabs on the ends. So you do need to ensure when you cut this piece out that you have the exact measurement that's given in the pattern for this piece of zipper tape. And I put my zipper on already as well, but so we're ready for that. And then I had that narrower piece. And then for the pocket itself, as you can see, I'm using this pretty print. It's one of the newer prints from More Me Know, and I've got my tag on it. And then we have 3 lining pieces. Now when you cut out the lining, the pattern piece for this you will use for both your front feature one and then the lining itself. And it'll tell you you will cut out 2 that are smaller, as you can see. Hopefully you can get this out of the way. You can see that these are not all the same size. Hopefully you can see that. Let me line these up. There we go. Well, I think you can see enough of that there. You cut out 2 of the pattern piece that are a little bit smaller. There's a dashed line where if you've got the paper pattern, you'll fold it over and you'll cut out 2 that are smaller, and then you're going to cut out 2 that are larger. Then in the pattern, it's going to tell you as well, you're going to need to cut off a little bit from one of these larger pieces. Jenny will tell you she just didn't want to have to create for us, I mean, having so much to cut paper, another pattern piece simply for one that's a smidgen shorter. So she tells you how much to cut. What I did do for myself so that I could keep track of which is which, I cut my little bit extra already, and you can sort of see here in the corners, I've got large, medium, and small, so that I can keep track of which is which. I could also number them based on the order in which we're going to use them. This is the Renew canvas from More Me Know. I thought this would be a nice thing to use. It matches the purple fairly nicely that's in here. This is the Orchid, I believe that was the name of this color. I mean, it really does match that beautifully. And so we're using that for our front pocket. We then need to move to the back, which normally would have, oops, let me get some of this out of the way, sorry. There we go. It has a slip pocket back here, so the pattern piece will show it to you. Let's center that a little more. I'll show you the cutout that you need for both your back lining, back exterior piece and the lining for it. I'm making it into a magnetic snap, so you can see I've already put the snap on it right there. And so I've got that already in place. I also really want to ensure that my curves on both sides of these are nice and even. If you watch my Gabriella video where I used actually this pocket on the back, I mentioned how, and at least for me, when I've got curves, my curves will look nice, but often one side is not as quite as symmetrical as the other. And for me, to make it easier, I decided to draw on the seam allowances, and so I can sew right on that line. So I've got that already in place. I do have my other 2 snap ends, so I've got the male snap ends on both of this and the front pocket piece already right now. And here are the female snap ends ready to go. And I'm using just some scrap of the fusible fleece from Fabric Therapy to provide a little bit of structure and stability right there. So we're going to use that. And then behind it, I normally, because it's supposed to be a sneaky little pocket, would use the same vinyl as I have here. And so when I was cutting this out, I don't have enough. So I decided we'll use this. Of course, then later when I went and looked at my stash, I found out I do have enough, but I cut it out already, so we're going with it. But I think that'll be pretty. Nice little pretty pop of color right there. So that's going to be a little bit behind, and I will put that snap on once I have this in place, because I'll use this to sort of create the dot, and we'll look at that. I also have, I'm going to be using a slightly darker webbing for the strap connectors. I'm going to use 1-inch strap connectors, as you can see here. And like on my Gabriella, I'm going to be using 2 different connectors, because this is going to be another version of a travel bag. I'm going to have one side fully attached and one side where you've got a removable strap connector. And so I've got those already. And then for the strap, we're going to do a double-sided strap. So I'm going to use the same webbing for the back, and then the fabric that we've got for our pocket on the front. I already have put tape down the back of it already, so that's ready to go. Since it's 1 inch, I just cut a 2-inch piece of this, drew a line down the middle, put the tape there. And I do have my hardware for that, so I'll have a strap end on one end. The other end up by the slider, I'm not going to worry about that, but I'll put the strap end on the side with the swivel clip right there, as you can see. So we've got this. This is our exterior. Let's take a look at our lining, our interior. I'm adding some things here, so let me sort of break this out into a couple different piles. Okay, sorry about that. So we're going to have on one side, and it is in the pattern to have a zipper pocket, because that's how you would be birthing it. I am still going to actually birth it this time. I'm not going to do a drop-in lining. I found, because, let me grab these again, because these are sewn right into the top seam allowance when you join the lining and the exterior, doing a drop-in with this, I guess it's fine, but I would want a stronger hold than that. So none of these materials are super stiff or heavy, and that was the intent of this bag. You can use materials very easily that don't need to be interfaced, and you should be able to birth it through the pocket here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to birth it through the slip or the zipper pocket. So I've got that already cut out. This is actually vinyl in the same print because that's raw edged, and I have right here the panel pieces, or pocket pieces, excuse me, that we'll use for that. On the other side, I've got folded in half. This is back to the fabric, some fabric to make a slip pocket. As you can see, it is longer than the width of the panel, and that's by design. I did it that way so that there'll just be a little overhang. I don't think there'll be enough to do a cargo pocket. There might be. I'll decide. Regardless, I don't have any issues sewing that into the side seams, so I'll just stitch along one end, turn it inside out, do a top stitch, and then I can sew it down. And so that's going to be that. The one thing I did do, let me pull this out of the way, oops, sorry, little fuzz, with my lining pieces was that I cut a little bit off the top. Let's look at this one, because your lining piece and your exterior, they should be the same height, but I'm going to turn it over this way, be a little easier to see, and it won't curl up. There, you can see it is clearly a little bit shorter, and that is because I cut some off to create a recessed zipper panel. I hopefully will have out already, by the time this video goes live, a shorter video showing you how to create a recessed zipper panel yourself in any pattern where it might be conducive to that. So something like this, where you can just cut some off the top. It sort of walks you through the math that you need and everything you need to consider when determining how much you want to cut off from the top. So hopefully, as I said, that should be out already, because I thought that'd be really helpful. But that's what I'm going to be doing for this. I cut some off the top already, and because I want to do a recessed zipper panel, I've got, let's see, here is my zipper for that, and I did already cut my zipper panel pieces right here, as you can see. So I will be doing these. I've got them marked and I have tape on them. I haven't folded anything over yet, but I will be doing these here. So we've got this for a zipper panel, and I do have a strap end for that as well. I will also, like I did in my Gabriella, be adding a little 1/2-inch swivel clip and a piece of 1/2-inch webbing into the seam allowance, so that it could serve as a way to lock either your pocket, if you want, or your main zipper. So it'll be on the same side as where my zipper closes. So it's going to close on this side. And so I would put my little swivel clip there, so that when it's closed, you can just clip it clip it onto your pull tab, zipper pull, and it'll help prevent someone from going in and trying to unzip it and get into it when you're not looking. We will then need, because I cut pieces off the top panel pieces, and I thought this would be pretty, matches the exterior. This is actually vinyl. Oh, and you can see I already marked it. That's right, because it is at an angle, so you need to ensure if you're going to do this, when you cut out your top panel pieces, you want to ensure that you know where your top is. So I've got that already set. I did decide on vinyl instead of the fabric. I work with an industrial sewing machine, so it can handle sewing through that. If you have a machine where it might be kind of thick, sewing through the vinyl here and vinyl on the interior, then use like a cotton. This was waterproof cotton that we're using here. You can use waterproof canvas, Renew canvas, some other type of lighter material if you need to. And I do have a tag here that I will put into the pocket once I sew it all up at the end. I will leave some of the bottom open to help birth it. I think it'll just be easier to get it through that. And then I'll feed that through the zipper pocket, close this up, and then I'll close up the zipper pocket. So we'll do that. So these are all of our materials. It's actually a really fast sew. Yes, I'm adding things on. That's certainly going to make it a little longer to do because we'll have the zipper panel that we need to do. But otherwise, it really is fast. Probably if you're doing this by the pattern, the longest part is this front pocket, but even that's not that challenging, or it doesn't take that long to do. So why don't we get started? We're going to start in no particular order. I want to just sort of get through some of the small items that I have sitting next to me related to this. So for instance, I've got the strap. I need to sew the tag onto the front pocket. I've got the zipper tabs I need to put on, things like that. Those smaller things so that I can just really start assembling once those are done. So I'm going to start with the strap. It's a double-sided strap. I didn't record the folding. I just did a strap in my Gabriella video, so I will link to that, and there are timestamps there. So if you want to see how I did that, you can go straight to that section. But it really was, since this is a 1-inch strap, as you can see, I've got 1-inch piece of webbing on the back, and I've got the waterproof cotton on the front. I cut a 2-inch wide piece of the waterproof cotton, drew a line down the middle, put some tape there, folded right into the middle so the pieces did butt together. And then once those were folded and taped to help hold it, I did put another piece of tape on the back side of the fabric to adhere it to, temporarily adhere it to the webbing. And so now I'm going to just sew right down the edge, 1/8 of an inch on each side of the strap. I'm not going to fully make it right now. I will eventually be putting a strap end on one end. I'm not going to put it on both. I don't know that it really needs it on both. But this, like the Gabriella, I'm going to have it so one side is fully attached to the bag and then one side has a swivel clip. And so I'm just going to do the rest of that, putting the slider on, putting all of that on at that time. So let me get started with this. We're just going to do this. It's at 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to be using the Serene Sky thread today from Wizardry. That's done. I think the Serene Sky will look, it does look really nice with that. You can see there was couple spots where my webbing poked out a little more than I'd like, but you know, it's one of those types of things you have to really be looking for it, so I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm just going to roll that up for right now, put this aside, and I think the next thing in my pocket, in my pile, is the pocket, and got the threads. There we go. Put up my hump jumper a little bit, and I'm going to bring down my seam allowance. I did all of that with a 5, but I like to do a 4, usually right around a 4 when I'm sewing on my tags. So I'm going to do that. I'll pull my threads through to the back. And this is one thing to remember too. So as I think I mentioned really quickly, this is the front pocket piece. Make sure if you want to put a tag on, do it before you start to sew everything together. And keep in mind as well your seam allowance, because sorry if I can get this straight. There we go. I do sometimes like to put mine down in the corner like that, but just make sure you take into account, that we're going to be folding it in like this. It's going to go in like this. I did one once and it was really too far to the side. This may be too, we'll see. I think, now that I'm thinking about it, I might move it over and maybe I will put it in the middle just to be safe. I will find an example. Yeah, hold on one second. Let me find, I think I have an example down here and I'll show you what can happen if it's a little too far over. One sec. Thought I had an example, but I don't. So we're still going to look at this one right here. And I do think I'm going to move it over. So you can see I did put my tag in the middle of this one, but let's just take a look at the side here. I mean, once you take the seam allowance into account, it's going to be, if I put it right there, it's really close over to the side. If I want to keep it on the side, and of course this is not exact how I'm doing this, but if I want to keep it on the side, I may want to move it over just a smidgen. And so I think that's what I might do, is move it over just a little bit. Yeah, I think that's going to be better. So I'll be right back. I'm going to move this over just a smidgen in that direction, and then we'll sew it down. There we go. It's not over that much more, but it's just a little bit, and I think that little bit's going to make a difference. So I'm now going to sew that on. I think I mentioned I've got my stitch length set to a 4. There we go. I think that looks good. I just put a little thin duct tape, something I could tear, on the back just to help hold down the threads. I kind of liked when I used some glue on the last one, but I didn't want to do that right here. I mean, it probably would be fine, but given that this isn't interfaced, I just didn't want to risk it. So that's done. Let's see what's next in the pile. We've got the zipper tabs that we will use for the zipper tape that on our front pocket. So per the seam allowance in the pattern, we're going to sew these down on both ends and then we'll top stitch them. And so you can see when I do these, so let's go over these. They were 2 tabs each, one for the front, one for the back. I always want to make sure things are really nicely kind of aligned. I like to clip them not just at the ends but on the side, because when I take these off, this will still be here and it helps to hold it together. I'm just always afraid that it won't be straight, and so that's what I tend to do. I tend to have it really well clipped. So we're going to do this per the seam allowance in the pattern. There we go, got that under there. Now the only thing I'm also going to do with this now, let me see if I can find, let me just find a silver marking pen, 1 second. I want to mark the centers because we will need that later. So I'm going to move my zipper to the end so I can more easily fold this in half. I'm not going to snip it, but I could if I wanted to. If you snip the middle, just ensure that you melt down the edges with a lighter. I'm just going to mark it on both sides on the inside. And so you can see I've marked my zipper tape there. So that's done. Let's see, what else do we have in our pile here. This is an easy one. So this is, I showed when I was showing the materials, I'm going to have just a basic slip pocket. And the first thing I need to do is create the tube so that I can put it down on the lining piece. So let me bring this back down. I'm just going to stitch across. This is something that I'm adding myself. So, I decided the length. I decided, what seam allowance I'm going to use. I'll just use, I think, just 1/4 of an inch. I don't need any more than that to sew these 2 ends together. So this will be my front side. I had to look. I guess you really could go either way. And this is where you'll have to decide. And actually, I think this is where I'm going to pull this out to look. If you look at the flowers, at least based on how I've cut it, If we look in this direction, the blues are sort of, the blue flowers seem to be pointing up a bit more. But if I go on the flip side, we've got our pinks, and I'm sort of deciding that based on the stems, the pinks. These here, we've got some that are going sideways. So on this one, let's see. Well, maybe I will do it with the blues up. You can see I've got no, I've got it like this. Yeah, that's how I have it. Essentially, I probably cut these at different angles, so there you go. So this is the side that I'm going to have be my top. And that only matters because I'm going to top stitch from that side then. What I want to do, I mean, this bottom part will be sewn down onto the material, or onto the lining piece, but I want to get this as flat as I can. I could iron this. I'm not going to do that right now. It's okay. I can just sort of do this by hand. I just want to have this, and I'll show you. Let me just clip this, and I'll show you. Okay, I clipped the bottom, and I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, but maybe you can. Just the slightest amount is sort of poking out from the front side. So you can see the seam, it's not right at the bottom of this. It's coming to the back just slightly. That way from the front, you know, I think it has a cleaner look. I'm able to do that because there's no seam on the top. I don't have to worry about it starting to creep towards the front. So I wanted to do it that way. I clipped it that way so that when I came here to sort of press this flat, I knew it would hopefully stay in place. So we're going to top stitch this 1/8 of an inch from the top. I think I'm just going to leave those clips on there for now. It'll sort of help it sort of form to that crease right there, since it's not on the actual stitch line. So we've got that done. That's ready for us when we're ready to go. Let's see, I'm just going to baste down the edges of my strap connectors just so it'll be easier to sew them in when I'm ready. What I will also do when I'm ready is, actually I could probably do that now, just need a ruler. Okay, so let's first stitch it down. Probably longer than what we were supposed to have for the pattern. I always tend to cut mine a bit longer. I just like the extra. I can trim off what I need to, but it just makes me feel more comfortable having it like that. The other thing I'm going to do is mark where I want to sort of align this when I sew this to the bag. I am really bad at guesstimating, oh, this is a 1/2 inch over, this is 3/4 of an inch over. Yeah, forget it. And so what I'm going to do is, as you can see here, I'm going to lie it down on my table, on the flatbed attachment, but I'm going to place, hopefully, there we go, hopefully you can see, it's a little hard, my ruler sort of at the bottom of my strap connector there. And I'm going to decide how much would I want hanging over, you know, or out of the edge of the bag. And I'm going to put a line there then. So I'm thinking, again, this is my decision. I certainly go according to what the pattern says, but I'm going to do, if I mark this at like the 5/8, that means, you know, by the time I sew it down, it'll be, you know, yeah, I think that'll be good. We're going to do it right there. I'm going to 5/8, once you take into account top stitching, or, you know, your top seam allowance, top stitching, that should probably be a good spot. That way it'll become pretty close, right, most likely, to the top. Okay, hopefully. We'll find out. Might have to kind of, play around with that as I go. Okay. Do the same here. Now, I will admit this one, and that should be fine. We're going to do 5/8. Okay. Great. So those are ready. I can just stick those aside. They're not going anywhere. I also, I'm going to get this out of the way. Okay, let's bring this back down to like a 4.5. I think I'm going to just do the zipper panel while I'm here, even though I'm clearly nowhere near ready to do that. So I think I showed in the when I was showing the materials, the zipper panel. This is not part of the pattern. This is something that I have just decided to do. I for my pattern piece, let me show this here. So this is actually a couple inches shorter here because I cut off some from the lining so that I can put a zipper panel in, a recessed zipper panel. So I already have these prepped right here, as you can see. I drew a 1-inch line at the end of each, and I have some tape there, so when I fold in, I'll be folding in 1/2 inch on each. And then what I also did was, oops, I'm so sorry, didn't mean to do that. I burned down the edges of my zipper tape right there. I did show all of this just in my last video for the Gabriella, so I can link to that if you'd like to see how to do that. But I've got it all set, so I've got this in here to make my zipper panel, as you can see. And so I'm just going to sew this down. I'm going to try to use a 3/8 of an inch. I should be able to get pretty close to that for this. And not part of the panel or pattern. Let me bring this up a little. That's something I want to include in this pattern, or in my version of this pattern. And so yeah, this wasn't a full 3/8 of an inch, and that's fine as long as I'm consistent with what I do. Here, I'll show you in 1 second. Hold on, sorry. When I sewed it down, I do have a narrow foot on my machine, so that's the first thing I would definitely recommend. You can put a zipper foot on if you want. I just prefer to use my narrow foot. But when I was sewing down, I could feel the edge of my presser foot was right up against the zipper coils right here. And I just made sure I could feel that all the way down. As long as I could do that, then it was going to be fine. I mean, it'll be sewn on as much as it can be. And I will ensure when I do the other side, I do that as well. Let me turn this up to a 5 before I forget. And so what I'm going to do here is I've got it turned over first, so I'm looking at the back side of the lining. I'm going to fold that over. This is lining material. This is Renew Canvas. Ooh, sorry, I just saw I moved my zipper pull. We're going to put this on here right now so I don't lose my zipper pull. This is Renew Canvas, which is nice and thin. It's not waterproof like the other materials at Mormino, but it is nice. This is the first time I'm really using it, and it has a really nice feel to it. But it kind of has a nice crease as well. I think you can see it's just taking that well. So I'm just folding it down like that to sort of crease and fold this down. I did cut my lining a smidgen wider just in case. I described this on the Gabriella, but sometimes depending on your materials, when you fold it over, I always seem to find that my lining, it does also, I guess, the front does as well, but you don't, when I'm sewing it, you're going to be able to control it creeping up. That's what I was about to say. It sort of starts to come back up on itself. Hopefully you can see, I'm trying to demonstrate by it sort of curving up, and it wants to come back up on itself. And, when you're sewing from this side, if you can't see it to help keep it straight, it might do that, and then suddenly it's a little bit narrower than your main one. So if you make it a little wider, really try to crease it as much as you can. It's going to be harder if you're using a true waterproof canvas because that is thick, but with something a little thinner, you should be able to. But now I can also more easily hold it and ensure that it doesn't start to creep back in on itself. So I've got it up to a 5. I'm going to do just a little bit first on this side to sort of tack it down in place, and then I'll start going around. And I don't want to sew the whole thing across along this edge that I'll go into the seam yet, because I do want to be able to pull this slightly. Not so much that I'm going to be pulling my zipper tape and the zipper coils, but enough to keep it just slightly taut. And the same thing on this side. I want it to be slightly taut without stretching or pulling anything too much. So I'm not going to sew across this whole thing for that reason. But I'll just do a little bit right now. So let's get started with that. Great. Okay, we bring this back down to like a 4.5. That's a good spot. So that looks nice. I think that looks okay. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So now we're going to do the other side. And so I left these untaped so you could see the whole process that I do. So we'll first tape these. Eighth-inch double-sided tape. I'm just looking. These look to be right now. So I can see already that my lining is a smidgen longer even before I put anything together. So I'm going to just fold it up a little bit more to make it even. And one thing you can do, here, let me show you. You obviously can do this when it's on the zipper tape as well, but I'm going to align these two here. I'm going to clip them so they don't move. There we go. And now at this end, I can fold it so that it meets the end of the exterior. There. So I can see now, is it even? Now I can see that the two are even on that side. They weren't before, they were just a little off. Okay, so one thing I need to also look at first, I had looked before, and I want to try to get these, go this way so that, oh watch, I'll have done it backwards. I wanted to try to get the patterns to sort of match a little bit. I bet I did it backwards. Let me see. Yeah, I think it was this side, so we're going to do that side. So I'm going to put double-sided tape down both edges of, not both edges of this, both edges of that and the lining. So both, meaning both pieces. Okay. Let's put the exterior on first. So I'm going to line this up so that, you know what, let me bring this up. This is when I like to ensure my zipper is all the way at the top so that this is nice and even. I'm going to hold this up here so I can see that these two are nicely aligned. And then but also get my zipper tape into the right spot. It needs to be right along the edge of your panel. There we go. I think that looks pretty good there. I'm going to line it up. Whoops, hold on. Let's get a little bit there to start. The other place where it's really easy to check and see if it's the same length and aligned is at the bottom because you don't have that zipper pull there. So let's see how this looks down here. So looks a little, maybe a little off. So I think at the top we're okay. Looks okay here, but look down here. You can see this one's a little longer. So I'm gonna pull this because I could have left my lining where it was. I bet you that one will be perfect, or would have been. And just bring it down. It's part of the reason we tape it, so we can fix it if we need to. See again, does that look good? I think so. I think that looks, get this zipper pull out of the way. There we go. Yeah, I think that looks good. So now we can put the lining on. Actually, it's still good. So once I have it in place, I'm gonna move my zipper pull out of the way because I'm not going to zip it or sew it like that. Yeah, let me just straighten this one out a little bit. Okay, so like before, I'm going to sew it down. There we go. Nope. Ah, there we go. Trying to get it all twisted. About as close as I can to 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to zip it up again. I find it helps when I'm trying to turn it out if it's zipped up. Just it helps keep the zipper tape from sort of flying all over the place. I'm going to again fold this kind of down, try to crease it. Do the same here. Get it to fold where you want it, right there. Without sort of bringing up the zipper tape. There we go. Bring this up. Yeah, looks good. Okay. Oh, somehow that came in too far. Shoot. Hopefully, I don't know if you can see right here. It must have, I just wasn't paying attention. I am going to debate whether I want to redo that or not. Because I really am not going to like that. I will likely redo that, but let's move on from that for now. I think if ever something like this happens and you're like, oh, and it just sort of, you're brought down a little bit because it was looking so nice and then suddenly you've got something like this, put it aside. You know, don't dwell on it. Don't focus on it. Either you'll come back saying, yeah, it's fine. Or you'll come back saying, no, I am going to redo it. But don't let it become something you dwell on in the here and now. Just put it aside and move on to the next thing. And so what we're going to do, I think I'm going to do now, is sew down the zipper overlay. I'm not going to put any tags under this or anything like that. I will put a tag in the pocket, but I'm not going to do anything right here at the moment. So I'm just going to start top stitching around. Oops, way too high. Let's bring my hum jumper down. Yeah, that's probably good. Okay, so I'm going to bring it, there we go. I'm just going to start sort of in the corner. Just all the way around, 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And I pulled out an extra stitch. Somehow I had a feeling I might have done that, so let's just get these long. I will fix that. Just one stitch. Okay, here we go. It looks okay. I had a teeny bobble right there. I could feel it as I went along, but that's okay. We're fine. And so I will cut this out in a moment. Right now I'm just trying to do everything for sewing right here. Let me see where, here we go. And so now we've got the panels that go along with it. And so, whoops, I'm just going to sew those down. I'm going to sew this at 1/4 of an inch and then, let me see, yeah. And so now what we do, so with this type of overlay, sorry, I should have talked about that. What you do is you put your zipper right side up against your lining fabric right side up as well. And we're going to sew that down. Once you sew it on one side, you're going to take your other piece of lining fabric for the pocket. Again, this is the right side. I've got tape at the top to help keep it in place. I'm going to take that off. And I'm going to flip my zipper up like this. I'm going to align the two sides here and put the top of the panel at the top of the zipper tape here. And then I'll sew that down. Sew this down at 1/4 of an inch as well. So here we've got it all sewn down. You can see it's kind of curling up. I normally would stitch those down. So I did the first one at 1/4 of an inch. I would normally go and do 1/8 of an inch. You would see that then on the inside, along with any stitches that I might do when I sew the zipper overlay over it, based on how I normally sew an overlay pocket together. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to show a different method for putting this together. So for right now, this is all I'm going to do. I will go prep this in a second by putting tape on it. I think that is everything for the sort of the small prep. I'm going to come back to this. Yes, I am going to redo this, but I will prep this after I kind of sew the rest of it together. This will be the last thing I do. This is going to bother me too much. So that's fine. Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. It's one of the last things we need, so it's okay. So let's start, because we've got some of that prep work done, let's start sort of sewing together some of the fun parts of it now. The exterior, so we can see that come together, and then we'll do the interior. So we're going to start with the back panel, and I know, if I recall, this is also how it goes in the pattern, just so that you can sort of get this part done. So this is, again, is where we're going to have a little sneaky pocket in the back. Normally it is just a slip pocket. I'm making it a snap magnetic snap slip pocket. And so I just simply decided to do that, not part of the pattern. I found the center. I went down about as far as I thought. I think it's about an inch, maybe an inch and a half. And then marked where the snap would go. What I then will, and that's on the interior lining piece, because this is what's going to come over that way. When we're all done, I will take the piece that sort of goes behind it, the backing, and I will put the corresponding magnet on that side. But we'll wait till we have this all sewn together. So I did that. The next thing you do is you align the lining for the pocket, sort of the part that will be against the exterior, and right sides together. So this is the lining, right sides together with the exterior piece, and sort of align it with this curve. And you want to sew per the seam allowance of the pattern. I've decided to draw on my seam allowance. I just mentioned when I was showing the materials, I really want this to have a nice looking curve. And so for me, I just want to draw that on. I think it's going to make it easier. So I'm going to sew this on. My stitch length is about a 4.5. And I'm just going to do it per the seam allowance of the pattern. When you get to the curves, if it helps, you can reduce your stitch length, because it's often easier to get around curves with a smaller stitch length. Go slowly. There's nothing that says you have to cruise through it. So now I'm going to, did cut off. I'm going to grab my pinking shears and I'm going to cut along this. I'll help it turn. There we go. So I just cut it to about 1/8 of an inch from the seam with the pinking shears. So now we want to turn this. I'll start in the middle. I'm sort of going to roll it. And if anything, you want to try to roll it so you see as none or as little of the lining as possible. If you're concerned about that, you can always use, depending on your exterior, the same material. So if it pokes through a little bit, you'll never know. The curves are sometimes the hardest one, where it's like, why are you turning me this way? So really just roll those. You know, I'm rolling those seams like this. Try to encourage it to roll backwards. Work your way to the corners. I find once I get that corner done, then the rest of the side usually will align well. When you do the side, you want to ensure that you have the top of the lining coming up with the top of the exterior, so that when you top stitch it, it stays nice and flat. So do the other side. And just to show you here sort of what I mean by making sure you can see what it wants to do. It doesn't want to align. It wants to just sort of fold on itself. So you have to force it to come up and be straight like that. And you can see I like to put a clip up here because I'm going to start top stitching here. It helps to have that already held there. Okay, so let's put this up to a 5. We're just going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Now I have my magnet here, but it's low enough that it shouldn't be a problem. You can, of course, hand crank through those curves. I'm pretty good at just doing one stitch at a time with my pedal, knowing my luck at some point that won't happen and I'll be upset, but you know, for now we're fine. I can see just the teeniest bit poking through. That happened to me on my Gabriella tooth, so I just need to be more aware of what's happening on this side as it comes over. Not a big deal. Okay, so I can see here, it kind of came in a little bit there. I'm not going to worry. You can see it's not quite as straight there. Not going to worry about it. That'll be fine. So now we're going to sew on this piece. So again, you can sort of, if it's directional, I mean, this is, the flowers could go either way. The flowers go this way, I'm certain. So I'm going to clip this to my lining. Now I had that one piece that's kind of funky, so I'm going to start on this side. What you want to do is clip it to your lining. There we go. This one will be easier if I do it flat, because my lining kind of came in on itself. There we go. I'm going to clip it all around the edges, but one thing we're looking for is to ensure that this is straight, because this will now become our back panel. So we do want this to be straight here. But what we want to do now is clip this panel that I've got to the lining back here, because we're going to sew those together. This we can sew completely. This is not the pocket we'll turn the bag through, so you can clip it all the way around if you need to. Whatever you want here is fine. Okay, and so just making sure that looks straight. I think that looks straight. Looks a little high on this side. There we go. I think that's better. Okay, so I'm going to take this back. You don't want to, even though I just clipped all of it to the main exterior at the moment, you don't actually want to do that. I did that just to look at it to see that it was straight. We don't want to sew down that right now. What we're going to do is fold this flat, pull back our sides of our exterior, and in fact what you can do if you want is clip those out of the way so you don't accidentally, don't accidentally sew on them. See this one and this side. There we go. You don't want to sew on those. Yeah, that side just kind of moved a little bit, because we're going to sew down the sides and then across the bottom. And we put my stitch length back to about 4.5. Jenny does provide the stitch, the seam allowance that you should use for that, but it's pretty close to right on the edge of the sort of the exterior there. So let's see. I wanted to see how that looks. Still nice and straight. Yes. So it still looks straight there. What we want to do, it's probably a little, maybe a little off, but that's where I can fix it. It's like I feel like this side is a little low, but we will stitch down now the side there. So do I want to cut anything here? I'm not going to worry about cutting. You certainly could, if you want, cut some of your seam allowance back here in the pocket. I'm not going to worry about it. But we want to now stitch down our back that we just created to the exterior, so it does feel like one big piece. And this is where, as I said, I felt like this side was going down slightly that way, but I can just lift it up a little. I can sort of maneuver it a little here. It'll all be caught in the seam allowance at the end when we do the final construction. Could just be that could be that that's crooked and that's what I'm feeling. But I think it's fine. I think it's okay. And so we're just going to sew that closed. You can do it at your construction seam allowance. You can do it at a basting stitch or top stitch of 5, whichever you prefer. But it's just to keep this closed now. Right along the top. Oop, I have to bring my hump jumper up a little bit because we do have some seams there. That looks pretty cute, but we're not done. What I need to do still is put in the other side of my magnet. And so what I'm going to do here is take my silver marking pen. This is the male end of the magnet right here. I am just going to kind of draw on the part that points out. I'm going to flatten this out and press down right there. And it should leave, and it did. Let me get the rest of it. A mark. It's hard to show you, but and it's going to be hard to see because there's sort of dots on here anyway, but there's a silver mark right there. That is where my magnet is going to go, the other end. So let me be right back. I'll grab it. So I have the female end and I have a washer. And what I need to do is mark where that's going to go on here. I'm going to put some backing on there. Even though this is vinyl, I still like to have something backing it to make it a little stronger. And so, I just have, let's see if I can, a piece of self-adhesive fleece. I like using this these days for this. I'm going to see, maybe you can even see it through the light. I think I can. That makes it easy. I'm going to see where it goes. Hopefully that's right. I put a piece there. And so now the next thing I want to do is take my seam ripper very carefully, and this is where it might be hard to see because I have to be careful with this. I'm putting the point of my seam ripper right into like the edge, like one end of the little slit that I made or that I drew. hold on. And I realize I didn't really walk through that. And so let's go and see. Hopefully they're in the right place. Here's my magnet. Yep, I can actually see on the back. It might be, whoops, sorry, moving cameras again. It might be hard to see, but I can't see the marks back there. I can see that it went through that foam fleece that I added. And you'll see it in a second. So I'm just going to push this through. There we go. And I'm going to take the little plastic bit off. Push that through. Grab my washer. There we go. I'll use my screwdriver to flatten it out. I like to have the prongs go out. I just find it, if it lays flatter, you're less likely to feel it from the inside. I'm going to push them pretty far down. There we go. And I do have another little piece of the self-adhesive fleece to just cover it. So I'm not concerned necessarily about it rubbing. I mean, I know many people are, and I can be. It depends on the materials behind it. I'm not concerned with this. It's just more so you might not feel it. It'll have a softer feel like that. So there, we now have our sneaky little pocket. Yay. So that's done. Nifty. Okay. So now it's time to work on our pocket, our front pocket. Woohoo! I'm gonna get some of this out of the way, make sure I've got everything I need. We need our front piece, that piece. We need our pocket pieces here. We need quite a few things. So we need the main exterior piece right here. There's nothing cut out, it's just a main piece. Sorry, the camera is slightly, the phone is slightly in a different spot than it was before, so I have to get used to that. We have the two kind of contrasting pieces here. They offer just some nice pop of color. These are the lining pieces for the pocket, our zipper, and our main panel, front pocket piece. And so let me see, the one thing I want to ensure have I done, I have not marked centers on all of these, so I'm going to do that really quickly. Great. So let me bring my stitch length down. We're going to start with this panel piece right here. And I already sewed on my tag. If you're going to have a tag, put that on. And we want to take one of our contrasting pieces here. We're going to sew that right sides together. One thing to keep in mind, both with the pocket piece and all the lining pieces, it's not a rectangle. It does come up and it's narrow at the top. So just ensure with all of these that you have them with the narrow part at the top when you're working on it. So let's put this together. And I'm going to bring my stitch length down a little bit. We're going to sew this per the seam allowance in the pattern. Okay. Just fold this up. And top stitch on the contrast. There we go. Okay, so next we're going to do, I'm actually going to use a little double-sided tape on this. I just like to ensure things don't slide around too much if I can avoid it. Move that under there, because we're going to attach our zipper. And so along the top here, we're going to put some double-sided tape. You know what? I should have cut my centers on this. Even though I have my center here, I want my center on this as well. Didn't really need it on the bottom one, just so used to doing it. But I'm going to put a center here. There we go. Because I want to put the zipper tape there. Okay. So let's get my zipper. There it is. Now, first talk about zippers. It says, this bag I'm making to be a travel bag. And much like I did in the Gabriella and I talked about in my travel bag video, I want to ensure that my zippers are closing in a way so that when I'm wearing this, they're going to be closest to me. They're going to be closing towards me. And so for this bag, I'm making it with the assumption that someone is going to be carrying it with the strap on their right shoulder, on their left side. And so for that reason, I want all of my zipper is closing to the left. So I want it closing the way we normally would construct it. If you're making this to have your bag so that you carry it on your right, with the strap on your left side, bag on your right, you will want to do it in the other direction. So it's just something to keep in mind. But mine, as I said, I'm going to do it so everything is on the left. Let's line this up. And it does come over a little here at the edge, but that's because my vinyl stretched a little bit, so it actually is perfect. Yeah, we're good. Just had a little stretch, but it's okay. Okay. I'm also now going to grab my piece. So we have 3 pieces of lining, and let me pull them out. Oh, here's the third one. Now, if you recall when I showed my materials, I marked them. Here's my small. Here's my medium, and here's my large. I want my medium piece right now. And I'm going to put some double-sided tape on that too, just to really ensure it stays in place. I can talk. Drop it. So now, even though I don't have I do have my centers cut here, but if you didn't, you now can, they're the same with the cross, so you could line it up all the way across, but I will go from the center. Line that up. Okay, I move my zipper out of the way. So now we're going to sew this down per the seam allowance in the pattern. Although you could do what makes you comfortable as well. If you are comfortable doing a 1/4 inch, do a 1/4 inch. If you're comfortable doing a 3/8 of an inch, do a 3/8. If you need to do something in between, do that as well. Do whatever is going to work for you. So now we can fold this back. Get this crease nicely, and we're going to top stitch on the vinyl. So we really do want to ensure that it's all lying nicely. I'm just going to clip the edges to try to help encourage it to stay flat, but I'll press it as I go along. You can see right now I'm really trying to flatten that out back there. I can control the front once I start. It'll be harder to control the back, so I'm trying to really crease it. If you have materials you can iron, go for it. That'll definitely make your life easier. Change this back up to a 5. You can see how pretty these colors are looking together. This is really pretty. Okay, so just 1/8 of an inch. You can see my top stitching on this side started to creep up a little bit. I don't think it's terrible. It's right here. It creeped up a smidgen, but I think that's okay. Otherwise, I think that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So now you can sort of see we have the inside part of our zipper pocket. So now what we need to do is take our large piece. This is where you can, so if it helps, mark them the way I did. So remember, the difference between the medium and the large is per the pattern. These two were originally cut the same size. You trim a little bit off of the other one to make it a medium sized piece. And so that's the difference here. So this, I'm going to put some tape on this now. While we're here, let's just tape the other pieces that we need. So we're going to need both sides of this taped. You really actually only need, I guess, I'll tape both. You don't need probably this one, but no, I take it back. I'm thinking this through. No, I don't need that one taped. That one I don't need taped. Let's not use the tape if we don't have to. This side we need taped. This is the side that will go to the zipper. And how do I know that? because I wrote it there, so I would remember. That's the other thing. If you're like me and you prep this ahead of time with your magnet, make sure your magnetic snap, make sure you mark which side is for the zipper, because it's going to be, there's going to be more distance between the magnet and that. If you do it this way, you're going to have some issues. So you could, of course, wait to do this, but I just like to prep as much as I can. I'm going to prep this piece as well. So now, what we need now, we need our large piece. Let's get our zipper back, our beginning of our pocket back again. And so we're going to do this. This is going to be right sides up. So this is the right side up and this is the right side up. We want it that way because if you think about it, here, let's tape this. I'm aligning the centers. So I had the center of that zipper pocket lining piece marked in the tape. I'm going to tape it, do it across. If you think about it, we need that to be right side up because when we open it, we want to ensure that we're seeing the right side of that piece. So we want that there, but now what we want to do is add also the piece here. This is the top trim. Remember, I marked where my zipper goes. So I'm going to take my tape off of that. And I'm going to align that on the front. Now, like before, I'm going to bring my stitch length down. We're going to do the seam allowance, or you're doing the zipper. So if you, whatever you did, excuse me, let me bring this down. Whatever you did to sew on to the zipper tape on the bottom part, make sure you're doing the same here because you want the same seam allowance. So if you did 1/4 of an inch, do 1/4. If you did 3/8, do 3/8, or whatever it was in between. We're not going to top stitch yet. I know you want to think, oh yeah, we want to top stitch, but we're not yet because we're going to attach the last piece and we're going to attach it and it's going to sort of come down. We want to wait until we're all ready to do that. So yeah, sorry. Just wanted to make sure we're looking good there. So I'm going to take, where's my last piece? I guess I didn't really need to tape that either. It's not, oh, and did I tape it on the wrong side? No, I didn't. You want to put these like this. We're going to do them right sides together. So could have just clipped it, but that's fine. Got tape. We're going to sew these together per the seam allowance in the pattern. Now this is one reason why you might want to wait to put in your magnet. I have a very small magnet, so I knew it was not going to be a problem. I also have a narrow foot, so even if I had a regular size magnet, it still wouldn't have been a problem. If you're, and I'm going to do it from the front so I can see it. If you're concerned about that, then do that after. The pattern will tell you where you need to put that, so you'll be fine. We are going to top stitch, not what you think. We're going to top stitch this part here. So you can decide, do you want to top stitch on the vinyl? Do you want to top stitch on the lining? I'm going to do it on the vinyl. No one's going to see this, so don't worry if it's not brilliant. But yeah, so I'm going to fold mine so my seam is going against the vinyl that I'm using for my contrast because that's where I want my top stitch to be. But you can decide where you want it. We're still not top stitching against the zipper yet. And I think, why aren't we top stitching? We will in a minute. So I'm turning my stitch length back down. So we've got all of this together here. We've sewn these pieces together. We've got the front and we've got the 2 lining pieces right here. And we have this right sewed together, this wide piece and then the additional lining piece here. The next step is actually to sew all of this together. And let me show you what would happen if we would clip this down to the bottom and we're going to sew across. But that's kind of thick if you think about it. So what we're going to do first, actually, if we flip this out of the way, is we're going to sew down just our lining pieces so that we can trim some of that out of the way and it won't be in the seam allowance. So I'm going to sew those down. Now what we can do, now that that's out of the seam allowance, we can do, I'm sort of holding this like this, we're going to take this piece here and we're going to fold it forwards to be right here. We're going to, oops, not that far. We want to sew it to our front pocket piece, or our very front lining. The front panel of our pocket, that pretty part. I'm going to sew that together. So match those up. And the way I'm doing it here is just going to reduce some of the bulk in the bottom seam, which you'll see in a minute. It can get really bulky when we put this all together, and so what I'm doing is going to help reduce some of that. So we're going to sew this together per the seam allowance in the pattern. You can also cut this down if you'd like a little bit. We're going to turn it, but that'll help also. So I'm going to cut this a little bit as well by about half. Okay, so we have everything sewn together. Here will be the lining pieces. I actually came up, I kind of looked to see how things were going to lay, and I wanted it shorter. I want to really ensure for me that I keep it completely out of my bottom seam here, because you'll see when we are getting ready to sew this down, this can get thick right here. This is going to be sewn onto the main panel, and I want to keep that out entirely. So I actually did this. You can decide, I mean, the pattern will tell you what to do. You can decide how big you want this pocket. I think this is perfectly fine. New day, I went back and I redid my zipper panel. If you recall, it just wasn't good. And that at least was my opinion. It was not even at the top. It clearly was not evenly sewn here. It's still not perfect by any means, but you can see it's far more even here at the top. It's a little closer on this side here than that side, but you're hardly going to notice that. You're never going to notice it when it's zipped up. There we go, sorry. So I'm happy with this now. Where we had left off, though, was on the pocket. So I had everything put together, and I've done some prep work ahead of time as well before coming back today to do it. So I've got two things I want to note that I did here, and one is actually something I mentioned before and a little piece of advice for it. As I was sewing this piece on before, and I was saying how, you know, it can get close to your top stitching, I have this small magnet, so I really didn't have an issue. But if you're using a normal size magnet, that could be challenging. If you have a zipper foot, it should probably be fine. But if you still are having an issue, and I had mentioned you could put your magnet on later, that is still true. But what I would do if you decide to do that, so you can remember when this was all one long piece, we sewed this piece on here, we folded it over, and we had a top stitch, and that was after we did the magnet. You can mark your holes or your slits for your magnet ahead of time. Do all of this here and then go through and do the slits. You still need to measure where the magnet goes from the raw edge of this piece that we did. That's an important step. If you measure it from here, from the top stitch edge, it's going to be too high. So that's just something to note. When you do this, if you choose to put the magnet on later, sew this together, measure it first from the raw edge, mark it, sew it together, then you can go do your magnet. That'll work. If you have magnetic snap rivets, they will fit right there. This is a magnetic snap rivet, as you can see. Now, my snap is just above, just a smidgen above. I probably could have punched the hole a smidgen lower. What I did, as you can see, I tried to center the top cap of the rivet there as much as I could. So it looks nice here. It really is. You can't tell. I mean, I can see it from this angle where I'm looking down, but you hardly notice that the magnet is right there. So that's another option. If you have magnetic snap rivets and you'd like to wait until you're done, you can. I've done that on two. I think it looks nice. So know that that's an option as well. But we're going to go back to the one we've got now. And so let me tell you the other thing I did. The vinyl that I'm using here it's a thicker vinyl. It's Luxe vinyl from Mormino, and so it is a bit thicker. And I found that as it was kind of rolling, or it's trying to form this edge, it kept rolling onto itself. It was not creating a nice crisp edge the way I would like. And so I'll insert a photo here, or maybe I think I took some photos, yeah. I decided to put a piece of Decaville light right here, because then I could sort of fold it over to where it needed to be, and it created a nice edge. So I measured the height of this bottom part, because we want these two to be about the same. And I determined, okay, that's the height. This is the size that I want. So I sewed all this into place. I have, and you'll see in the photo, I sort of measured from the sew line here underneath on the back side up the amount that I knew I approximately needed here. Measured that, put that in, and I cut a piece of Decaville Light that would have fit in there. Because I had this all sewn together, I glued it in place. If you did that before you sewed the bottom together, you could certainly use a heat press and carefully put that in place. But that allowed me to have an edge so that as I rolled this over, it would roll over nicely and form this crisp edge right there. I was having some problems with that, so I thought that would be helpful. The other thing I did is, you can see it here, but again, I've got a photo for it that I'll insert. We need a top stitch, and your seams need to go behind the vinyl. Well, because it's thick, it just didn't want to stay down. If you're using something here that you can iron it. It's really going to make it easier when you're doing this part here if it can be flat. But because I'm using vinyl, I can't do that. I decided to use some double-sided tape to really hold that into place. So that's also there. It's double-sided taped down, double-side taped down. It's a weird expression. And all of that is sort of helping it to hold in place. So as you can see, here we go. The thing to keep in mind too when you're doing this is to try to have everything be the same height all the way around from one edge to the other. You want this to be about the same height all the way across, because once we put it on our pocket, we don't want it to look too askew. Now on the back, you can maybe see there's a little more on this side folded over than on this side. Clearly I have something off somewhere. I'm not concerned about it. We're not going to see it. I want to ensure that this kind of looks nice and straight all the way across. Ultimately, my bottom might be here a little crooked. We'll see when I put it together. I feel as long as the top looks straight, it's going to be okay. We'll see that in the next step. So now what we're going to do is top stitch. I have seen, I think Lauren in her original video for this, she went up the sides, across the top, and then down, and then she came back and did the top stitch there. And maybe it's just me and my lack of experience, I find that if I do the top first before this, it starts to kind of bubble down. I don't know how well you can see. It's like, it's pushing the fabric down, in this case, the thick vinyl, and then I have more than I want there, and I end up with this bubble in the middle, kind of like that. I don't know how well you can see that. Not quite as dramatic, but that's what happens. So for me, I like to go across first and do my top stitch here, because then if there's anything, it's going to push it up to the top, and I can sort of finagle it here, have it roll down, and have it still be straight here. That's my goal, is to have a nice straight, even edge and have it be a consistent height here. So I'm actually going to do the top stitching on the bottom. I'm not going to worry about the sides yet. I'm going to top stitch the bottom, see how it looks, see if I need to finagle it at all. I guess I don't really need these clips here now. It's just checking to see if I could feel the edge there. So maybe I will actually take those off. No, see, I'm this is all, I'm kind of doing a lot of this on the fly right now. We're just going to go through. I'm going to leave my clips there because hopefully that'll help keep it from rolling much. See how it looks. That looks good. I think that looks pretty nice. There we go. So now what I'm going to do, and this is where I can feel that little bit of Decaville there, which is helpful, but I still want to ensure, I'm going to go over to my cutting table. I'm going to ensure that it's still, once I sort of flatten this all out, I'll probably clip the bottom to help keep it taut, that we're all pretty much around the same height. You know, if I have to have a little extra kind of back here, no one's going to see that. If I have to roll it and it gets a little loose on one side. My goal is to have it, when you're looking at it from the front, be a nice even shaped pocket. So I'll be right back as I go and just confirm that. I'll make sure, move my clips around if I need to, and then we're going to top stitch on the top part of that there. I'm pretty happy with how even the top is across. You can sort of see I folded this in half so I could see how, whether they were sort of even all the way across, and they are. And my pocket is nice and even across, so that's good. Unfortunately, my middle section here is not even all the way across. I clearly on this side, I just wasn't careful. It's longer here on this side than it is on this side. It may ultimately look a little crooked when I put it on. I'll have to sort of finagle it a little bit when I put it down in the pocket. We'll see that in a minute. But I'm comfortable simply top stitching. I did a good job here. It's folded over nicely down at the bottom. So I'm just going to top stitch across the top now. it's not too bad. It's handmade, remember, so it's okay if your top stitching isn't always perfectly straight. But there we go. We've got our 2 rows here, so it's nicely top stitched here and here. You can see the look it has on the back then, so it creates this kind of this nice edge. We've got our magnetic snap. I'm going to sew down the sides, just close those because it'll make it easier when we attach this to the main panel. We are all sewn together. Got this nice pocket on the inside, very nice size. So even though I made mine shorter, it doesn't go quite as deep, it's still a great size pocket. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some double-sided tape on the bottom here, just because it's going to help me lay that down and not shift. But we're going to put this on the main panel, and we are going to baste it on the sides. So I will be right back, and we'll see how that looks. You can see we've got the pocket on the front panel. The pattern will tell you how high up from the bottom to place it. One thing I would also recommend though is place it there, and in case you're like me and maybe your pocket is not quite as symmetrical from one side to the other. Mine actually was, but I have done it in the past where one side was a little off, not enough that I wanted to take it all apart, but it was a little off. Measure from the top as well. I measured here, I measured in the middle, and I measured on the edge to ensure that everything was really aligned nicely. I found that it was only maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch, but I shifted just slightly. I don't know that you'll really notice it at the bottom, but measure both from the bottom and the top to get it straight. I start with it on the bottom per the pattern. I then kind of try to base it on the top because that's what you're going to see more than the bottom really. And you'll see that too, but obviously you're going to be looking at this first. So I did that. I then clipped everything in place. I'm going to sew across the bottom first, do my tops. I'm not going to go down, over, and up. I want to go across the bottom. I'm actually going to do 2 rows of top stitching. You don't have to. I know one thing Lauren mentioned in her video, if you, again, have your pocket pieces, your lining pieces going all the way down into the seam, you might want to, instead of doing an 1/8 of an inch from the bottom, which is what we normally do, a 1/4 of an inch, so that you're kind of going over that real thick, bulky part right there. I don't have that issue, so for me that won't be a problem. I like actually how it looks at 2 rows. I also decided to use 1/4 inch double-sided tape on the back to help this sort of stick down. So if I only do an 1/8, you're going to feel it. I just felt 1/4 inch does a better job holding this down for me than an 1/8. And so I'm okay with that. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to come through and go up on one side, and I'm going to go up on the other side. I don't want to go up and down on one because if there's any shifting, it's going to be skewed like that. So I want to ensure that I'm going up on both of them. So I'm going to start by going across here. As I said, I'm going to do an 1/8 of an inch and a 1/4 of an inch. I'm doing 2. My top stitching got wonky, a little wonky down there. It got narrower. I might think about what can I do to make that look better. Be right back. Okay, so when I was doing my top stitching, because of the backing here, it doesn't usually have that issue, but it did. I think I had the pressure on my hum jumper not quite right, and it was sort of sticking. The back was sticking a little to the metal plate here, and it caused it to skew, and I just didn't recover well from it. So I originally was going to have 2 rows here. We'll see if you can see this. I was going to have 2 rows, an 1/8 of an inch apart, but one of it started to skew and it got really close. So I added a third. They're all kind of, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch apart. It gets a little messy right around here because this is where it sort of started to merge and stayed there. I tried to clean it up. I think it's fine. It looks like a decorative element, and I think it looks a little better than having 2 that were, one that was clearly going off track. Now there's one straight one across the top, one straight one across the bottom, and one in the middle that sort of says, yeah, whatever I want to do. So just as a lesson, even if something looks goofy, if you goof it up a little bit, I mean, my zipper panel before, that was off. So I felt I needed to do that over. This one, it's not enough for me to say, oh, I'm going to scrap it. I'll just make it look like it was a decorative element, and I'll do some extra stitching, and we're all good. So now we're going to stitch down the sides so we can just baste those in place. Not today, bobbin. Just ran out. Gonna have to make some more. And so I can see I'm going to need to trim a little at the top. You can see everything is perfect at the bottom because my pocket was the width of the base here. So let me just cut off this thread. I'll trim a little at the top as long as everything looks centered, and I think it does. The last thing we need to do here is put the other side of our magnetic snap in. Now, the pattern does tell you where to put it. I always put mine in last, and I do it based on where this one is. I just, like I did on the back, I don't want to risk marking it on the main panel and then find out it wasn't, you know, where I put the male end is not where it needs to be to match up with wherever the mark is there. So I will, like I did on the back and like I've done on others, I'm going to mark this here. Just use my silver marking pen, sort of draw a little on the outie part there, press it down into the main one, and I can see a mark here. Hopefully you can see that, but there's a mark, hold on, right there. So now I know where I need to put the other one. So I will be right back. I will have trimmed down the sides, and I'll put on the magnetic snap, and we will be ready to sew together the exterior. Yay! Normally I'd actually finish up the interior so I have everything done and put it together, but I really want to see how this is looking. So we've got our magnetic snap on there. I did put some of that self-adhesiveable fleece on there. I did cut my slits longer than they should be. It's still fine. They weren't that much longer. What I did, and I know you can't see it because I've already put the magnet on there, but in that little bit extra of the slit, I sort of folded it out so I could see it, and I put a dab of glue in there. I do also have backing, so underneath this is also another piece of the self-adhesive fleece, so that's sticky. Between that dab of glue, the self-adhesive fleece underneath, the magnet, the washer, this on top, I think we're going to be fine. It's going to be really in there, but just be careful. So let's put this together, because as I said, I just want to see it. So we're going to clip along the sides. And, oh, you know what? I didn't cut my sides down. So 1 sec. Okay, trim just that little bit. You really don't have to. It'll be in the seam allowance. But for me, as I'm aligning things and sewing it, it helps me if my edges, my sides are as flush as possible. So that's a decision I decided to make. So I'm going to clip along the edges. And this is really now a pretty basic bag that you're assembling. We're just going to sew down the edges and the base, and we're going to box our corners. I'm obviously not sewing across the top. I just like to clip it together to help keep things from moving around. You can also draw on your seam allowances if it's going to help you as you put this together. I'm not going to do that. I'm fine. But one thing you will notice with mine, because I'm using Luxe vinyl here for the exterior, I used Luxe vinyl for that trim. I have got some really thick sections here. There. This is just down where the bottom of the pocket was, but you could see, also imagine here, if my lining had gone all the way down into the seam, it'd be pretty thick there. So I'm okay that I made that a shorter pocket and I have it entirely out of the seam, but it's still thick there. So depending on your materials, just know that you're going to probably need a hump jumper here, or as you're considering materials, think about something thinner. The original pattern had to use waterproof canvas really for everything. So that would make this so much thinner right there. So just keep that in mind. I have the industrial, so I'll be okay, but I'm going to have to really kind of crank that up to get over these parts. I am also going to sew down one side, then sew down the other, and then cross the bottom. This is another case where, just in case there's any stretch, I want to ensure that the stretch is going in the same direction on both. So I'm not going to do what we normally do, down, across, and up. I'm going to go down, down, and then across. So I'm going to turn my stitch length down. You can also, if you want, do 2 rows of stitches just for some strength. Oh, forgot, I need a bobbin. Let's put a bobbin in, and then we'll get started. So as you can see, I've got it all sewn. I did do 2 rows. It'll look like more here because we also have the pocket that was basted down. Got a smidgen wide here, but not so much that I'm concerned about it. And so you can trim these down if you like. I'm going to trim them. I don't trim at the very bottom and top because I know for when I box my corners, I want to have a wider amount there. Same at the top when I'm going to do my top stitching. So I really don't usually go down about 1 inch and up 1 inch. But let's get all that prepped and get our corners all clipped, and we'll then do the corners. I chose to nest my seams, which hopefully you can see here. And I'll take this one off so you can see they're going, one seam is going in one direction, the other is going in the other, as opposed to butterflying it. I tend to prefer to do that regardless of whether I've done multiple rows of stitches or not, but because I did 2 rows of stitches on the sides and the bottom, butterflying it just wouldn't be as flat because there are 2 rows there. I mean, there is a little bit of a gap. So for me, nesting them was easiest. So, but you do whatever will work for you there. I like to clip the sides as well to try to ensure this stays nice and straight and doesn't start to curve a little bit. I don't get worked up if it does curve. Sometimes it's just really hard to keep this straight right there and keep this from curving. Don't worry if it does. It'll still be fine. But this is definitely a trick that helps, is putting some clips on the side. So I'm going to now stitch down the sides per the seam allowance in the pattern. They do too, as you can see here. This one stayed nice. As I said, things shift. This one shifted. Look, you can see it's not straight. Shifted up a little. I'm not going to worry. I'm just going to trim it down because I don't need all of that there. Look, it's straight now. It'll be fine. Now, I'm not going to be doing a drop-in lining for this one, because here I want to turn it out. I want to see it. I mean, I'm going to need to turn it back to sew it all together, but I want to see how it looks. This is always a good time in case there's something maybe you need to correct with just the overall side construction. Let's see. Okay, that's looking cute. As you see here, that's looking pretty cute. I don't know that I see a difference. Remember, one of my corners, it slipped. I don't see a difference there. I'm glad I cut down my seams here. I mean, these are still pretty thick because I have so much going on here, but there's less. It's probably, I think it's just a little nicer with that. And you can, of course, sort of train them a little bit. I would do that later. I can train this to try to fold right here. This is really thick. I mean, that's what I do. These same materials again, maybe not. It'll be fine. I'm just like trying to force it flat, but I mean, it looks nice. But yeah, so why am I not going to do a drop-in lining? Let me bring it down a little so you can see. One, not because of the materials. I've done drop-in linings with Lux Vinyl before. 2 reasons. One, we're going to put on our strap connectors in a minute, and I have these lines here, if you recall. I'm going to sort of sew it in place. I'm going to turn it inside out and then I'll sew it down. If we were to do a drop-in lining, I mean, I guess I could baste it in place first right now and then sew it. I feel by doing a normal kind of bag construction where we're going to do 1 row of stitches at our smaller stitch length, that will really help to ensure that the strap connector is sewn in, and then we'll do another top stitch. Just feel it's going to be do a better job of keeping it in there nice and strong. So that's one reason. I just would prefer not doing a drop-in with the strap connector there. The other is because of right here. I mean, this would just be really thick to fold over this seam. Doesn't mean I couldn't do it, and obviously I'm going to top stitch over it later, but I think folding it over, hopefully hoping that it would stay nicely folded right there. It's really thick right here, and I just don't think that's ideal for doing a drop-in lining. So for me, it's going to be easier to not do one. I do prefer them to standard sort of construction. I really do like drop-in linings, but we're not going to do it on this one. So let's turn it back because we're going to need it turned back anyway. So now we're going to put on the strap connectors. So if you recall, I left these sides. I didn't sew, I didn't cut them all the way. It's going to make it easier, one, when I want to sew everything together and to put down those strap connectors. What I'm actually going to do right now is try to stitch those down at 1/8 of an inch. So I'm just holding it open. You could, of course, use some tape if you wanted to there as well to try to keep them open, but I just think that'll make it easier for everything in the long run. When we're sewing it closed, and I know you can't see it right now, there we go. But I am just holding open, and I know it'd be hard to see. I've got the stitch, I'm sorry, that little bit of the seam allowance folded open. Let's see. Yeah, good. It's going to make it easier for me when I put on that strap connector. You can see I just sewed it open right there. Let's do it on this side. Yeah, that's good enough. So you can see I didn't go all the way across, but that's okay. For any kind of bag construction where you're going to have a side seam, this really will help. So it's going to help me now when I sew down my strap connector on the other side because it's nice and flat. But even if you don't have a strap connector there, doing something like this is really helpful. As I said, you could tape down the sides with something thick like this. That might have been good, but it'll be fine. So what I'm going to do now is I've got the 2 strap connectors that I had before. Now this is where I have to think again. It's sort of talked about which direction zippers should go. And now I want to think about, because one side is going to be permanently attached. One side will have the swivel clip, so you can take that off. Which side does this go on? For me, this needs to go on the same side as the zipper pull. I can see my zipper pull from my inside pocket right there. So that means that this has to go on this side. I also already drew on a line right here. That's where I want to stitch it down, or I want to at least, sorry, not stitch it down. I want to align that with the top of the bag right there. And then I'm going to just stitch 1/8 of an inch right from that. So I know you're not going to be able to really see that, but those are the steps I'm taking. So we've got both of them done. We're going to put this aside. Let's finish up our lining. So the first thing we're going to finish up is the pocket. Now again, this is one that I added because this was not part of the pattern. There was a zipper pocket, and still will be, because you need to be able to turn it. But this is the slip pocket I added. I sort of decided how high up do I want it, but also how far down from the zipper panel, because remember, we will have a zipper panel here. This is really pretty close, but I am probably closer than you normally would have. But I'm okay with that since this is a travel bag, and you might want it to be closer there so that when it's closed, it sort of covers it a little bit. So I'm okay with that. But I did figure out how high I wanted it. I put some double-sided tape on the back of this, so it's holding it down. That's why it's not coming up. And as you can see, I just used some painter's tape at the top to help keep it in place. What I'm going to do, like I did with the pocket on the exterior, I'm going to go across the bottom first. I'm really only going to do 1 row of stitches on this one. It's not as thick, so I'm fine with that. I'm then going to sew up the middle. Now you won't see it, but I have a very faint chalk line up the middle. And so I'm going to sew up the middle to make this a divided pocket, and then I'll do the sides. And so we're going to do that. I may put a rivet at the top middle here. I think I will. So I'm not going to go all the way to the top. I'm going to come a little short. So let's start here. We look all nice and pretty now. So we've got our pocket here. I did put a rivet there. I just thought it would look nice. I actually could probably put one in the bottom, but I'm not going to worry about it. I did put a little bit of Decaville Heavy just to sort of support it back there as a scrap that I had, because this could have a little bit of stress put on it, so I wanted to ensure it was strong. So now we're going to do our zipper panel. So we already sewed around. We sewed that on. That was one of those early steps we did. And so now what we need to do, let me grab... We need to count how many times I drop things. Okay, we're gonna grab this instead so I don't have to get off my chair. We're going to cut the center. So I'm just gonna start it with this. Kind of go. So I didn't do the full length because that would freak me out, given what this is. I'm always trying to be really careful putting the back cap on. There we go. Okay. Then I'm going to take my, actually before I take my duckbill scissors, I'm going to cut all the way to the edge. So you can see I went pretty close to the edge here, but I can get my scissors underneath there. So you see they're not there, but I'm going to go fairly far in here and on the other side too, because I just like that. So I'm going to, before I cut, I always like to see, yep, we're good. No scissors on that side. You don't want to cut your overlay. I'm going to get my duckbill scissors. So, here they are. They're just kind of flat like that. And so now I can reach in. When I put my tape on my overlay to tape it down to this lining panel, I put the tape down the middle. I mean, some people might put it at the edge. I put it down the middle. For me, that works. And I just cut up to that tape. So it's all cut out. You'll notice I put some marks on the side. I was watching Ashley Flora 6 Stitches. I was watching her most recent video tutorial, and in the pattern she was sewing up, they did that to help know to where you should start and stop based on the technique we're using, where we're going to be pulling our threads through to the back. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to try that too. So I've got that all set. I'm going to then put this on here. I'm going to go do this at my cutting table. I'm going to put it through. But when we start, we're going to be starting only at the bottom, and you'll see what we do with the lining in the back. So I'll be right back while I sew that, or get that stuck down. Okay. I've got it in place. It's nicely centered. Like the zipper pocket on the front, I've got my zipper going to the left, but it all depends on how you're making your bag. So for me, everything's going to the left. Zipper's to the left, strap end that is removable is on the left. If you're doing it the other way, then of course have it going the other way. The back, we're going to have our bottom panel going up right now. So the way we're sewing this, and I've got it trying to crease that down so it's kind of nice and straight. We're going to be sewing, and when it comes through, it's just going to be down here on the back side of the panel. So we're just going to start. I've got a mark on one side, then I'm actually going to probably turn it this way. Somehow it's just easier so I don't have as much there. But I'm going to start in one of these marks on the bottom, and I'm going to end in the other, leaving my threads long. They're 1/8 of an inch from the edges and 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. So that way it's sort of where you would expect the bottom part of your box to be. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to put my needle down into that corner. Not going to backstitch. Now I'm going to end in that corner. I'm going to do the last one by hand. So there we go. Long so I can tie them off. So we've got the bottom done. Now what we're going to do is fold this back, and I'm going to crease this down. I'm going to fold this down as well. I can see my double-sided tape is not holding there. That's okay. Sort of flatten that out. Oops. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to start in the hole where we finished here, go up to the corner mark, across, down, and finish in the hole where we started. I'm going to place it in that hole. And I'm going to finish in that hole where I started. And we will pull our threads through. I actually didn't need to do anything by hand up there. It was right at where I needed it to be. So let's pull this through. There we go. So that's how it looks on the outside. Let's get some of our, I'll wipe the marks off in a minute. Looks like a nice looking box there. On the back, it looks a little weird because it's like, where's the bottom? Well, the bottom stitching is right there. And so when we open it up, it'll look kind of like a normal pocket on the inside. So that's how you do the type of overlay of sewing up your pocket so that you don't see extra rows of top stitching on the inside. So now what I'm going to do, I did not cut the, you can see this is uneven. If you cut things per the pattern, everything will line up nicely. This one doesn't because I just sort of cut some pieces. I'm going to first even these up. I am then going to fold them. We're going to keep this open because we do need to turn the bag through this. So I'm going to leave this open, but let me get this prepped so we can then sew up the sides. Okay, I've got things kind of prepped back here. It's crooked. The line looks, I know it looks crooked. That's because the piece is crooked. But what we're going to do, I folded up the edges. We're going to now sew down just the sides. We don't have to sew down the top because it's already sewn here. So we just need to sew down the sides. I'm going to hold it so it's the panel is facing up. I'm going to pull back the edge here and fix my thread. I just like to sew right along the edge right here. And we can trim down some of this then. There we go. So you can see front, back. It's a nice pocket to have. Yeah, that'll be a nice pocket right there. Okay. Next thing we need to do will be to sew on our zipper panels. Then we're almost done. So, got my zipper panel here and my curled up top lining panels, which if you recall, I did mark where the top goes on those. So, I'm going to put those aside. We're going to start with this. I'm going to start with the one with the pocket. I want my zipper panel and my pocket zipper to be going in the same direction. I'm going to baste these in place first. Remember, this is not part of the pattern. I have decided I'm going to sew these on at 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to baste this first at 1/8. And before I sew this together, just realize I have to think. I have also, one second, I have our little D-ring that we need to put into it. Remember, this is, I'm going to put on the side where I've got the zipper pulls. And this is, you could put keys on it, but it's really, if you feel like you need a little extra security to ensure that this doesn't, somebody doesn't reach in and open it, you can latch this closed. So let's take a look at one of the bags I've done and where I put it. So this one, let me move this out of the way. Another dropped item, I'll get that in a minute. This is another one of mine, which I made specifically for travel. Use that magnetic snap there. Have my zipper panel, and I can see here, I put it into the side seam. Let's close this and see how that looks. So here it is with the side seam, and here, hopefully you can see it's right there. It's all, sorry, it's black nickel, so it's hard to see. I could theoretically, I mean, you can see how far open I can get it. I know I think I want to, well, it's about as short as it can be. I think if I put it in the side seam, I want to put it lower so that it's, I mean, this is right even with the panel. And you could see, gosh, if someone really wanted to, you could unzip that almost halfway. So I think that's one thing I want to do. I could also put it on the side, but let me see. There is space. There's space if you can see here when this is zipped. There is space right here. So I could put it there, and that way I don't have to reach over a little bit. I think I might try that this time. I'm going to put it next to the zipper panel right here, but on the other one and then on the back side. So I'm going to, let's first prep then. Let me move this out of the way. Let's first prep our little piece of webbing here. What I'm going to do is decide which side do I want to be the front. I'm going to fold this over once and then fold it again like that. And I'm just going to go rivet it. I'm going to rivet that into place, and then we're going to put it into our seam. So I'll be right back. So you can see I've got it riveted. I just wanted to sort of see here. I mean, I could probably move it over a smidgen more even. I need to, if I'm putting it next to the zipper panel, I have to take into account the seam allowance that we'll be using when we sew this together. And also keep in mind, it's going to sort of change the shape of it. This is going to come creating sort of a side. So it's not going to stay straight even when we have take into account the seam allowance. But I think I like that there because it can't go very far. You can see if you were to try to pull it over, this really is just as far as that can go. So I think we're going to put it right there. We'll see. We're testing it out. So let's do it. And when I put this on, I have to keep in mind, I'm going to sew that top panel on at 1/4 inch. Here's my rivet. So just ensure if you put that there, that you're keeping enough space there for when you have your rivet there. So you don't want to end up sewing over your rivet. Now let's take one of our panels. So the panels are angled on the sides because they actually need to match the shape of the main panel. So that's why I marked the arrow is pointing up to the top. So when I sew this together, I need to ensure that ultimately it's at the top, which means I have to fold it down, and I'm sewing the bottom edge of that along the bottom edge, the top edge, sorry, of the bottom panel. So that top panel piece will be upside down when we do this. So as I mentioned, this is not part of the pattern. I'm adding this, and so I'm going to do this at 1/4 inch, but you can, of course, decide what you want yours to be. I'm going to cut this down just a little bit, and I am going to melt the end then, but it's a little longer than we need it to be. So we melt that. It's now time to top stitch. Now, often when we top stitch these, these days I feel like many patterns have us top stitch on the lining side, which will create a perky panel. You can see it'll want to stay up like that. Whereas if you top stitch here, it's going to have it go down more. The perky is nice when, especially for normal day-to-day work use, but I think when you've got something that is for travel, the whole goal is to try to make it a little more secure, a little more protected. And so I'm going to have it go down because that way when it's, you can sort of imagine when the bag is closed, it's protecting what's down here a little bit more. The zipper panel is still a ways down, but think about, we'll take a look when we do our slip pocket. It's going to be about right here, and it's going to protect that entrance to that. So I'm going to top stitch on the top panel here. So the lining, or sorry, the seam allowance is going to go up towards that top panel, and I'm going to top stitch 1/8 inch from the edge there. Looks like it's stretched a little, but that's okay. What we want to do now is that, trying to see, does it look crooked? It's fine. And so now we're going to take the other side. I'm going to baste this on over here first. Oh, let me show one other thing. One moment. I do have, as you can see, the acrylic template for this piece. Well, this is for the back, but it's the same size. Let's see. How do we fit? Was my math good? I'm going to actually clip it to the top of this to make sure that the height is right. Let's see. There we go. You can see it's going down to the bottom. So we're good. I mean, you can see it's essentially clipped at the top. The height matches the bottom of this. So if you use my formula, you'll get the right size panel. Okay. So now let's, as I said, sew on the other side. That looks nice. Just realized I never marked my centers on these top panels. I'm going to do that now because I will want to align my centers. I'll have to see if I did it on the other panels. Yeah. I am going to clip my zipper tape, sort of, let me do it this way, just out of the way, because now we need to sew the sides. And so the first thing I'm going to do is align my top panels. Now that I have those, I need to ensure that they look good. If you were doing it without the top panels here, if you're just doing it per the pattern, you could just, you know, match up the sides, sew it up, you're good. But since I have those top panels there, I need those seams to match up. So I want to do that. I'm going to then start clipping up. I just like to get the top panel clipped. Like before, I am also going to clip across the top. I just feel it helps to keep things from shifting too much if that is also clipped. Then we're going to clip down. The pattern has you sew up all the way around the edges, box your corners, sew together with the exterior, and then turn everything through here. I am going to leave the bottom open so that I can pull it through the pocket and then close it up when we're done, because it's going to be easier, especially since my exterior is pretty, it's not terrible, but it's thicker. It's going to be easier pulling it through something this large than this large. So I'm going to leave this unclipped at the moment. I'm going to sew down the sides. Now what I'm going to do is start on this end, well, it doesn't matter which side, but I'm going to start at the top with the normal external exterior seam allowance in the pattern. When I get down a little bit, and whenever I have a top panel, I tend to wait until I get down to that. Maybe if you want to, you could go down just an inch if you'd like. But I'm going to start to get a little wider, and I'm going to increase it by about 1/8 of an inch. And you can do 1/8, you can do 1/4, depends on what you feel comfortable doing. I'm probably going to do just about 1/8, and I'm going to go down, and I'll do that all the way down to the bottom here. I'm going to do that on both sides. Then we will sew flat the side seams here like we did the other. But let's first sew these together. Let me get my stitch length back down. I am not going to do 2 rows of stitches. I'll just do 1. Okay, let's see how my seams, my side seams look. That looks good there. Yeah, this one shifted ever so slightly right there, but not enough you've noticed. This one looks good. I'm actually going to open this up. It's going to make it so much easier. In fact, hold on. Let's sew down the end of this just so that we know the zipper can't go anywhere. Since I'm using nylon tape, so I can sew down the end. Okay. Now I don't have to worry about a clip there. It's not going anywhere. Because for this part, it really will be easier for when we're constructing this to have this as open as possible. So you can see now it's essentially as if you had no zipper tape there, or no zipper panel. So like I did in the other one, the exterior, I'm going to flatten this out, and I'm just going to stitch along the top to keep that nice and open. So we're going to turn this out. We want this to be right side out. We're going to put it into the exterior. Okay, so here's our exterior. Find your front. Pocket goes on the back, the way I've made this, and all my zippers are going in the same direction. Putting this on the inside. Make sure your zipper panel tape gets down there. And we're going to start, we always start with the side seam. So I've got the connector there, so it makes it harder to see, but still I've got, because this has that center stitch length, or seam in the webbing, I can sort of align my seam here with that, and I'll know that it's aligned there. So I'm going to start going around and doing that. This is going to be a thicker seam over here, but that's okay. Go to the other side. It's so much easier aligning this as well because I stitched these down. You can see it makes it so easy. So Really do that on any bag. Stitch those down. We are clipped. Now, oh, there we go. We are clipped. You can, if you want, use some double-sided tape, the way you would do with a drop-in lining to help adhere this. You could also staple it to ensure that it kind of stays in place. I think I'm okay like this. I am going to be using the cylinder arm now. So we're going to take this off. And we're going to use a different piece for it too. We're going to use, let me take one of these off. We're going to use a special piece that extends the length of it. So we're not just using the cylinder arm this time. We're going to be using this extender plate. And I just realized I'm missing a piece of it, so I got to go find that. But what this does is, once you put it in place, go like this, I have to get my little place to hold it. It extends the length a little bit, so I can put my bag on, and it helps to support it. If I don't, take this off. I am supporting it. I have to hold this up, which is not a big deal, but it sort of changes the, I don't know how well you can see. I mean, if I happen to be holding it, my foot is nowhere near the pedal, so don't worry. But if I do this, and let's say my hand goes down a little, I mean, it's lifting up the material on this side. It's not quite, it's going to sew differently. Whereas if I have it nicely supported, it's even support across, it really makes a big difference. I know Brittany from the Emporium just got hers. She said she loves it. So I definitely recommend, if you have a cylinder arm, that you get this extender. I will link it in the description. It comes with, does it have another one after this? It comes with these one piece here. So there's this original piece and has these connectors so you can connect it on. I mean, you need this at least as an additional one. This only adds a smidgen extra. But if you had a really big bag, you could put another one on here too. So it comes with that, and you could buy more of these. I would really be worried about what you were making. If you needed more than this, that would be huge. But this should be, enough for most bags, just having even just the one. This is great for Tuesday totes. I've used this when I was doing the tailor tote, because you've got the top stitching there. Anything where you're holding up a fair amount the other end. So you still just put this on at the end of a different shade of pink. And now it's in place so that I can use it. But we're going to start on the side. We're going to do the seam allowance in the pattern. Bring this up. So as you can see, it just fits right up there. So I am going to, before we turn this to top stitch, I'm going to trim these down just slightly. I will definitely want to keep these in the seam allowance. I'm going to cut these down by about half though. There's plenty hanging over. And then burn them. You can see this is already starting to come apart. I don't want that. I want to try to head off any of the fraying. And so I'm going to go quickly do that. Then we will turn it and see. Because otherwise I think the stitching looks nice and even all the way around. So let's go take a look. Okay, so we're going to turn this out. Sorry, started to pull it already. I did melt this down. I melt these down to the point where I can feel that they've melted. I really like to ensure they're melted out. So I pulled out the interior already. Sorry about that. Let's just turn it. So much easier with this big opening here, but we can close that up after. So reach for the very bottom. And in fact, I have arthritic thumbs, so I always need to help myself a little here. You can both push and pull a little. So we've got that all out. Whoop. got that out. So let's push in our lining so that we can top stitch. Now remember, you might feel like here's the lining. Nope, that's the bottom of this top panel. This is where we need to fold over. We need to fold over to that mark right there. So I'm going to get the lining in. Pull this up. You can pull up on your little side connectors too. That might help. Sort of straightening everything out on the inside. Now you could sew up the base already. I just find for me it's easier if I leave it open so that if I need to reach up, you could do this through the pocket as well, but it's just easier for me. I could reach up, and if I need to sort of poke out the seams a little, it's just nice having that big pocket or big gap there. So I'm going to pull this up here. It is thick right here, so just be aware. I'm going to start, and actually, you know what? I'm going to use my big clips. I like these when I'm getting ready to top stitch. I'll grab these clips here. I find they're nice for holding things down. And so if I can, I'm rolling these so I can feel the top of the seam. But even if I can, I'm going to try to roll it I caught it. That doesn't count. Smidge it behind. Smidgen. So yes, I'm rolling this so I can really ensure the seam isn't sort of caving in on itself. Yeah, I'm going to use the big one. Sorry, the small ones are just, they're right there. The big ones are good over there on the side. So I kind of, what I tend to do is I'll sort of push in on the seam with my fingernail or just my finger a little bit so that I can feel it flattening out like this. I don't know how well you can see that it's sort of flattening it. And then I can try to have it come up, then I roll it up so that it's nice and flat still. So that's what I often do. I will flatten that seam out first, like this, in my rolling action, and then roll it flat. Hopefully we're all straight, but you can see I've got this clipped. I've got some big clips on the sides where it's thickest. Try to hold those down. Normal clips around the rest. I like to start my top stitching in a side seam. I figure, I mean, you already have stitches there. I just feel it's a nice place. You can, of course, start on the back. It's always a logical place as well. But I just like to start it on the side. And so I'm going to take this one out, start it on this side. I'm going to want to roll up a little here. I'm just going to try to do my best to hold it flat. Now, keep your threads long if you want to tie them off. I'm not too worried about that. At least at the moment I'm not. Let's see. Let me get this in here. It was just hitting the interior pocket, so I just had to move that over. There we go. Okay. Let me get this up. That's good. So 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Coming up to my side again where I've got that connector, I'm going to have to really crank it up because it is thick there. I'm going to take this off now already too. And you might have heard that. It did not like that right there. I'm going to finish this stitch manually. There we go. It just hit a thick part. There we go. Let's get this. So it made a noise. I turn it off. I'm going to turn it back on. It should be fine. In fact, I'm going to do a couple more manually just to get it past this hump. Didn't like that for some reason. I think if I had been going faster, no, I know if I had been going faster, it would have been fine. It didn't like it. I was going slowly. It hit a really thick, hard, dense part, and it just sort of got stuck. So you can see we're fine now. So I'm coming up to the back panel where I've got that pocket, and I've got some thicker seams there too. Not quite as thick as my strap connectors, but still pretty thick. See? It's because I'm going slowly. Did it again right there. It's not even as thick. Let's turn it off. I'm going to finish that stitch. I could feel it was thick, so not that it wasn't. There we go. I think my top stitch might have bobbled a little. So there, you notice I made it over at that time. I was going faster. If I had been, I did slow down a smidgen, and I could hear it wanting to say, I'm going to stop, but I just kept powering through. You lose a little more control, obviously, if you're going fast. You can't control how wide, I mean, maybe your stitch, it's not quite 1/8 of an inch. I mean, you lose control. So ideally you want to go slowly through those. You might want to hand crank if you're using an industrial and you're getting to those thick seams if you need to. I might need to here. We'll see. I'm just going to, let's just give it a go. I'm going to crank up my hump jumper. Let's see. No problem, and that's because I went fast. Notice the speed really does make a difference. So let's see how it looks. Hopefully I caught everything. So let's take a look. On the inside, it looks like, yeah. I always, you know, when I have it go a little to the back, I can see, for instance, right here, it's not as even as I'd like, but that's fine. I mean, you're not going to see that. But when you have it go towards the back, there's always the chance you might miss some of that on the inside because it's not completely level. But it looks good. That looks really nice. I'm happy with that. Okay. So now I'm going to change my stitch length. I changed it to a 5 for that. I will melt the ends of the threads later. But we're going to open up our zipper pocket, pull our lining through. So let's pull this out. Pull our lining through the zipper pocket so that we can finish that. I need to turn my hem jumper way down. No seams I need to worry about now. I'm going to sew the bottom and box the bottom, the corners of the interior. Okay. You don't need to pull, obviously. You just need enough so you can see it. Remember, we increased the seam allowance on our interior. Let's push this in. Let's get our bag. See how it fits. Looks good. Sort of flattening everything out in there. Yeah, that looks good in there. Hopefully you can see in there. I'm going to try to get a little more light in there. I know it's not great. Oh, there we go. Looks pretty good. So let's just sew up that pocket. missed the smidge on this part there. Okay, we're gonna have to fix that. I did more like a 1/16 of an inch there rather than an 1/8. I like to do that, but of course you run that risk. So that's me. Okay, let's zip this up. We're of course going to fix that, and we're not going to keep it that long. But look how cute! Look at that. Oh, that looks nice. Pocket on the back. And then our zipper panel on top to help keep things secure. Open that up. We've got our zipper pocket on this side. A slip pocket divided on that side. Lots of space for stuff if you're traveling. Okay, so we just need to finish the zipper pull and the strap. So let's grab our strap. So here's our strap. We're going to start the strap the way we'd normally start a strap. I've got my strap here. I had to decide which side do I want to be. Actually, I'm going to put a strap end on it, so it really didn't matter. If you're not putting strap ends on, sort of decide which side you think looks better. So that could be the side that will be with the swivel clip. The other one's going to go against the strap slider. So I've got that here. This is waterproof cotton, and you know the webbing. I mean, both of them could fray. I actually put some glue on the top to try to hold that down. So it's still tacky, but that's fine. I'm going to put in, so let me pull this out. So I've got my strap slider. Strap is right side up. I'm putting it in to the strap slider so that the back side, for me it's the webbing, is going to be against the slider. And so the slider has a flat side, and then the other side, you can see where it bends over. That's the back. We want it to be against the front, the top here of the strap slider. So I'm going to go in over the slider part and then through the other side. And you can decide how much overhang you want. I don't usually have that much. I'm going to both sew it and rivet it into place. So I'm going to I usually do about an inch, maybe an inch and a half. And so I think I'm going to go there. Yeah, that looks good. So I'm going to sew that down. So just a nice row of stitches right there. I'm going to go and, as I said, I like to have a rivet in there as well. So I'm going to put that. I could even put 2 rivets in. I made that long enough I could put 2 there just to keep it nice and strong. I put a little more glue there as well since it's now on my fingers. But yeah, so let's go do that. So we've got that riveted in place. I did 2. Just why not? And now we're going to need our purse. So again, remember we've got one end where we're going to have it permanently attached and one end with the swivel clip. I've got my swivel clip as well. I'm going to put this aside for right now. Hopefully it doesn't fall. So I'm going to take my strap. I'm going to turn it so it's upside down. I mean, we're thinking of the purse and this strap's connector as the other swivel clip. So normally what you would do is you would have your strap upside down and you'd put your your swivel clip on like this. Well, same thing. I'm going to be doing this, as you can see, sort of from the inside. I want it now coming through the outside. So here, inside meaning inside, here's the interior of the purse, here's the exterior of the purse. So I'm doing it from the inside. Put it through my knees. And so now it kind of looks like this, similar to what it would be if this were a swivel clip. And like if it were a swivel clip, I'm going to put it up through one side of the slider. So we've got the back here of our part that's attached. Make sure nothing is getting twisted. I'm going to put it up and again over what we have already there. And I'm going to push that through a little bit more. There we go. And now I can put on my swivel clip right here. And then I could rivet that down. I could also stitch it down and rivet it down. Now what I'm going to do first, before I do anything, before I stitch, rivet, anything, I'm going to put on a strap end. It's easier to do it when the swivel clip is there. So I'm going to go do that, and then we'll just sort of affix everything and see how it looks. And it's done. So I've got the swivel clip on. I just riveted it. I didn't do any sewing with it. I just felt the rivet would be fine. I did 2 like I did on the strap slider. Here it is. Oh my gosh, look at the colors. Look how pretty this is. So we've got, I put on the zipper end as well. It's small, it's short. I mean, normally when we have a zipper panel, and we have a little bit more of a tail, but I wanted it so that it didn't have a lot. Wanted it so that if somebody were coming in here, maybe like it gets tight right there because the zipper end is there. You've got a lot going on. Whereas if the tail is there, that's thinner, and I think it would be a little easier to get your hands in there. So that was the whole point. It was to make it long enough so that you could still pull it up, so that you can zip and unzip easily, but short enough that when it's down, it sort of blocks any fingers. We've got that. Let's see how, oh, I didn't try this yet. Let's try the little clip. Let's zip that. There we go. So there it is clipped, and yeah, that's as far as I can get it open. That is perfect. That's the perfect spot. So sorry, I've got glue on my fingers. I put it in the top, the seam between the bottom and the top panel, just next to the zipper panel. Absolutely perfect spot. And you can see it's fidgety, which is what you want. You don't want somebody to be able to easily undo that. So that's there, which you could also use. Let me open this up. So even with the short zipper end, it still opens up nicely. You can still see nice and wide. But I could I zip my pocket inside? Not zip, I'm sorry, clip. Let's see. Yes. So if I wanted to, I could also clip. Hopefully you can see that. I've got this clip to the pocket here too. So you could do that if you wanted to. So that's why you've got that there. Or use it for keys. Let me straighten that out again. But we've got inside, we've got our zipper pocket on that side. Our slit pocket on this side. And again, there we go. Having the panel come down over it kind of protects what's in there. Got our sneaky pocket on the back, the nice magnetic snap. And then the front, we've got the front there. You hardly notice my kind of funky stitches, but we've got a pocket there. And then our pocket here. Ah, I love it. I love these colors too. The colors are so pretty.